Welcome to I Testify Conversation Station. For the next couple of episodes, we'll be doing a sit down with young couples, a short series called A Love Story. Today's focus is conflict resolution. Our quote of the day says, you must have the desire to save it. If that desire is there, you must learn how to channel it into constructive steps that can resolve underlying conflicts and ultimately save your relationship. By Tony Robbins. We have Maddens in the house today. We have Aisha Madden, a wife, a first-time mama, the creator and the host of More Than a Mama series. Check it out on Instagram. She's a woman of faith, and I'd like to say a mental health advocate.
Yeah.
And then we have Daniel Madden, a man of God, a family man, a creative. He has a love for photography. Check out his Instagram page, optical_opium. He has a YouTube page called The Creative. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
All right. All right. And so let's go ahead with the first question. So, I mean, we all want to know, love story is the topic. How did you meet?
Do you want to go first or do you want
So I'm going to tell you that I met Daniel when he was a freshman.
I have no recollection.
He does not remember this. So how we got to where we are now is by God's grace. Anyway, he doesn't remember, but he was walking with my friend from their gym class.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how you see your friend with a guy or college, you're like, oh, girl, okay, I see you. That was kind of my vibe that I was giving off. And I was trying to be like, oh, is that you kind of thing? And then after that, I never really saw him like that again. I was just thinking that he would be good for my friend at that point.
I'm knowing that I was actually good for her.
Well, yeah.
Wow. So, Daniel, how did you know she was the one? What was it that kind of just went, this is it?
That is a great question. So there are a couple of things that led to this. So, and it's going to sound strange, so please bear with me. But I actually had just came back from a date with another girl. This is before like I was even pursuing her or anything of that nature. And we were of like the same culture. She was Jamaican and things of that nature. So I thought we'd hit it off. However, when I came back from the date, I was like, God, she's cool and all, but like, I need somebody a little bit more spiritual. So that night I prayed and that prayer. And then the next morning, Aisha called me and she asked if she wanted to have devotion with me. So that was kind of like on the nose type, sign that, hey, maybe you should, switch lanes a little here. And it was after that moment that kind of like never looked back. But even up until that point, we had been hanging out with mutual friends. We go to game nights. She'd invite me to like a Bible study that they did at her apartment complexes that she lived at Oakwood University. And so, yeah, it wasn't that we didn't know each other and she called me out the blue. Right. We had established a relationship, a friendship at that.
But I'm just going to add, I still thought it was like super weird for me to call him up. Like I stopped and started calling him like 4 or 5 times. Cause I was like, what? That's so lame. How you just call somebody and you're just like, oh, do you want to have devotion with me?
I hear you. Yes, it's strange.
It is, right? And I was like, no. Like it felt like God was like legit telling me. I'm like, no, but I look stupid. Like, who am I to be? Yes, we had a relationship, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't like, let me call you up and let's pray together type thing. Like all like that at that point. So I'm like wrestling with myself, like, oh, I don't want to put myself out there. I'm being too forward. Mm-hmm. I'm second guessing everything, but I eventually did call. And I guess that was the reason why, because I listened to the Holy Spirit who told me to call him.
And wow. I'm so happy that we're doing this. So now we have on record that your boy. Okay. Hey, listen.
I listened to the Holy Spirit.
That's all right. And he allowed you to pursue. And I responded in a like manner.
Wow, that's beautiful. You don't hear a lot of stories where like people admit that, maybe the woman made the move and then the guy
I know.
It's usually the opposite. So this is beautiful to hear.
Yeah.
The next question I was going to ask is, how much influence did your faith have on it? But I mean, you pretty much answered it there, where she kind of like hit you up for a Bible study and it's like, this is it.
Yeah. No, for me, that was a really, really big thing. And I guess you probably can talk about what our first date was technically as well.
Yeah, this is like a typical Christian answer, but our first date was to prayer meeting.
And it's not like if I said, it's not like if I asked her, hey, let's go on a date to prayer meeting, but it was what it was. Like, it was a date and we did go to prayer meeting. And that was like when we started to get a little bit more comfortable with one another. Just, getting to know each other one-on-one, because most of the time we were around friends, which is one thing I would definitely advise to anybody, that group dating is a thing, and it is a healthy thing. Because I got to know how she is around her friends, and she got to know me around my friends as well, to an extent. So, yeah.
I mean, you're right. You're so right about that, because a lot of the times, because we're just in this bubble with your partner, you know them only to that extent. And there's certain things that you may not even be able to see until maybe later on. For you to be new, it's like, what's this change behavior? But it's not. It's always been. It's just not more comfortable with you on a friendship level, right?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Sure. What a story. What an inspiring. It's different, but it's nice to hear stories like this. This is it. First date, prayer meeting.
Yeah. Well, we did eventually have an actual date, which I consider our first date in particular. And it was really weird. We went to a hole-in-the-wall pizza shop and we dressed up to the nines. I'm talking to like, we were in, I was in my bow tie with my best suit on. She came out in a dress and heels. And here we are in Alabama, redneck state with Black people just dressed up to the nines, eating calzones and pizza. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And we were out of place. But you know what? It's better to be overdressed than underdressed. So, I mean, we left a statement.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's uplifting, like I said, to hear a story like that. It's so different, but it's so sweet. And just to see, like, the influence of, like you said, the Holy Spirit, you felt like God was leading you, and the way He led you is unconventional, but it still holds a lot of power. And you just knew that this was the right decision to make. So that's amazing. Now, we're talking about conflict resolution today. That's one of those things in relationships that everyone wants to know, like, how do you remain on the same page? How do you understand one another? I'm sure you went through challenges. So how can you be more understanding in a relationship, especially at the beginning, when you first started out? How are you able to work through those challenges of understanding?
Yeah, for sure. And you can go first, right?
I wasn't ready. I was still thinking.
Oh, you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So our first year was rough. Not that it was rough getting to know each other. It was rough based on circumstance. We had just moved. I had just moved back to Canada. I was there in Hamilton, right? And her coming over as an American citizen, she was expecting that she'd be able to work fairly soon. And that didn't happen. So she was at home while I was, quote unquote, living the dream and doing what I was called to do. So that was some tension, right? Like, I would come home drained from doing things that I was so excited about, but she wasn't doing anything that she was excited about at that point in time. So that did cause some friction. Looking back at that time, I don't know how we dealt with that.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know. I just think time went on and I eventually was able to work. So I was eventually able to contribute to, I guess, the conversation. But yeah, it was different. It was almost like two different worlds.
Yeah.
I guess. And you know, like when he comes home, like I haven't really talked to anybody all day. Like I have talked to some people, but you know, it's different with the face-to-face and with your spouse.
Right.
So he would come home, he'd be super tired because he's just getting into, it was his first job, first real job. So it took some adjusting with that as well. It was a lot of adjustments for us at once. We moved to a new country, where I did. We got married, new job, first career job, like a whole lot of things kind of against us. And we were away from family because our family was and still is in the United States. So it was difficult. I think with time, things just got better. I was able to connect with, you know, some people at the church that we were at the time, and some other people, as far as you guys, even at Hamilton East, just building the family that we could connect with where we were. I think that was a huge part in us becoming more happier with our circumstance, even though odds were stacked against us. I think at a certain point, we just decided that, you know, we just gotta use what we have and get in touch with the people that we have, so we can still feel connection. We can still do all the things we miss so much. And I think we still have adopted that even now that we're in Edmonton.
And I would say, to be quite honest, we probably didn't deal with it well within our first year, right? Because my wife, she's very open about this as well. At times she would hold things in and not say anything to me. So I don't know what's wrong with her. And I was still exploring who I was within the marriage as well. And she was trying to understand that I have introverted tendencies. So I get my energy from like literally sitting in the corner reading a book or playing video games. Video games, not as much, more so reading books now. But at that time, I was a big video gamer. So like I'd come home and I just need to de-stress. So I'll log in like an hour, 2 hours of video games or whatnot. And she's wondering like, why doesn't he want to talk to me? And we didn't exactly have the tools to communicate what we actually needed from each other and what we needed from what we needed for ourselves as well. And I would say it was not until we moved here to Edmonton that we started to do a little deep dive into actually really communicating the things that we need from each other and what we need for ourselves as well. And I don't know if you want to get into that right this second, but we do, and we have developed some tools that does help us be better for one another and also for ourselves. I don't know if you want to get into that right now.
I mean, let's get into it, because you already kind of went through like the challenges, right? That's the part where people really, you know, for you to be open with that, that's where people kind of have trouble. Like, is it all roses? You know, at the beginning.
It wasn't.
But to see, like, you know, to have the reality that it's not, you know, now people want to know, like you said, it wasn't until you got to a certain step. Now, what did you do? Like, what was the shift from there to now?
Yeah, I just want to say something before you go into the steps.
Take it on.
Oh, okay. Because I just wanted to say, like, I don't want to give anybody else false hope for us to be saying, oh, it was rough, but look at us now. Like, we're still a work in progress.
Oh, for sure.
I think we're always developing. I still don't always say what I need, but I'm trying to be better at it. I think the more that you just practice implementing new habits into your life, it'll be easier for you to do that. I think we're much better than we were before. We praise God for growth, but also we want to give ourselves grace at the same time to know that we're still a work in progress. We always will be, but let's just use the tools that we have and do what we can. So speaking of the tools that we kind of use, every Sunday Sunday is the day we try to come together. We do come together to discuss finances, to discuss what's going on in our life, to discuss anything in our relationship that we may have some concerns about. I'm going to tell you totally honest, like, I used to hate like these meetings. I used to hate them. I'm not a financial person. I love to just spend. I don't care where it came from. Like, I hated having to sit down and look at the numbers. I also hated having to take the time to sit with why I was upset and wait till Sunday. But I do see the beauty in it, because I know in and of myself, things can set me off very quickly. I am a firecracker. Some people may not know that about me, but it's the truth. That if something sets me off, I'm just like, like, let's get into it. But I think there's some wisdom in actually taking some time to just sit with it for a minute to see if that is even something worth bringing up. Like, is it really something? Now, if it's still bothering you by Sunday, then just go and say exactly what it is. But it also gives you the wisdom to know how to bring that up. Because if you bring it up angry, you might end up regretting something that you might say or do. And you're like, man, why did I do that? Like, that's so unnecessary. So I think there is beauty in waiting and having a set time for when you talk about things. There are certain things that do need to be addressed right away. Right. And I think within your relationship, you know what those things are. I can't tell you that, I don't know what it could be. The toilet seat was left up. You need to address that now. I can't tell you what that is for you. I think you guys need to communicate what that is for you. But I think it's setting that time aside just for us to talk about all of the things that are going on, financial wise, spiritual wise. We check in with each other spiritually as well. How is our spiritual life? How are we doing mental health wise? It's like an all-inclusive meetup where we just kind of just have that time to just share, really pour into each other as much as we can.
And you said like every week, that's every Sunday.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Like I never really. And, the thing that really touched me was you said, not everything needs a response right away. You get time to think. And I think a lot of us need that because when you get hasty or impatient, sometimes you say things, maybe you make decisions or you speak about emotions that you have in the moment, but that's not really how you might feel about it later on. And I think that's really a constructive step to really think and process it.
Yeah. And, to be completely honest as well, this has worked for us for a very long time. But what blew up our spot and our, that time together was having Ezekiel, our son, right? We're still scrambling to find a set time to do this. So most times we kind of just do it right throughout the week, whether that's, hey, we have a little bit of time. Let's go ahead and do the finances now. Or we check in with one another. Hey, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What are you reading? How's your spiritual life like or whatnot? Or sometimes it's just organic. Like sometimes I just want to unload and just talk about where I am spiritually and what I'm feeling and how I'm not doing too well or whatnot. So it has been happening a lot more organically. However, we would like to get back to having that one day where we can hash out everything. And we're still trying to figure what that looks like for us at this point in time. Because Ezekiel's a handful. We love him, but he is a lot more active now. So
and I think that's important. Like you said, on the same page. The page is going to change. Like the page is going to be, it's going to be a new page. You might have to move somewhere. You might add additions to your family. So you just got to pivot kind of together and figure out how you're going to do it. But always have that goal in mind that we want to try to get back to that. But right now, let's just do it what we can with what we have.
That's a good one.
Like, how do you end up compromising? Like you get to a situation where you're like yes and he's like no, and you're like I'm staying with my yes and he's staying with his no. How do you get back on the same page? Because that's where it usually gets stuck.
We don't compromise. We actually don't compromise in our marriage. I don't know. It sounds weird. So the word for us is concede rather than compromise. So I choose to give up what I want for her at times, and she chooses to give up what she wants for what I want at times. Because compromise leaves both people unhappy in doing something that they don't want to do, while conceding shows that there was love that went into this decision. So I'm giving up what I really want to do for the sake of what you want to do, and I really don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it because I love you. right? So,
but that has to be reciprocated, because it's not going to work if somebody's conceding, and I'm like, okay, when is it my turn? Like,
we're not out here keeping checklists of,
no,
I conceded the last time, it's your turn today. It happens organically, right? And I'm not saying that this is something that we've always done, or we always do. Sometimes we do dig in our heels and we don't compromise, neither do we concede. But if we are going to do something, we set a precedence for conceding rather than compromise.
I like that. I'm going to use that word now. We're conceding. We are not compromising.
Yeah.
I like that. And I mean, that's true love. I think that's where we miss it. Like, if the basis of the relationship is love, you're going to want to sometimes just give in. Not because it takes anything away from you. Like you said, you're not keeping a checklist.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us go into relationships and we're like, okay, what can it do for me? But it looks like in your relationship, you're like, what is best for us? And what's best for us is what makes the other person happy. And I think this is what shows in this conversation with you guys today, that you're really just trying to make sure that both of you are good. And you learn from the past and you want to keep moving forward.
Right.
Yeah. And you said something that was key. You said that we are still growing. I think a lot of the times we think marriage is a destination. So Pastor said, marriage is not a destination. It's just another journey. You're just going on another journey, another car. Let's go. Let's keep moving.
You're absolutely right. It definitely is another journey. And honestly, you find more about yourself. Find out more about yourself, I should say. It's a I don't even know how to explain it. Marriage is both beautiful and also gut-wrenching as well.
It's a beautiful disaster.
It's a beautiful disaster in a way.
Not totally disaster, but you know what I mean. Yeah,
because like there's some things that happen within the marriage that you're like, man, I am selfish. That's crazy.
And you reveal yourself to yourself. And you gotta have a come to Jesus moment with yourself.
Exactly.
That I really need to stop these habits and I really need to stop this behavior because it's not good.
Yeah, and we found out so many things about ourselves, whether it's being defensive, not willing to share. There's so many things that we found out about ourselves that we realized, like, oh man, like, God's still working on me on this one. You know what I mean? But like you said, it's a journey, and we've committed from the very beginning of our relationship. We had said, hey, listen, our goal is marriage. Whether we get there or not is depending on the work that we put into our relationship. And once we got married, it's like divorce is not an option. We're going to have to work on this thing, right? And if the day that I stop working on this is when you have to call me out, right? And vice versa, right? So that's the mindset we had going into our relationship. That's the mindset we had going into our marriage as well. And I think it has helped. It has helped a lot. That and doing a whole lot of therapy before we got married too.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do it, but yeah, we did like a full 2 years of pre-engagement and then
or premarital, not engagement.
Premarital therapy and whatnot, because we felt that we needed to dive into this a little bit more so we understand where one another is coming from. And in my opinion, I do believe when you do that pre-work before the marriage, like, you set yourself up to have a really great marriage down the line, right? Like, there's a lot of things that people, that even some of our friends, we've heard them like struggle with and whatnot. It's like, wow, we've never struggled with that because we talked about that in premarital counseling.
Right.
It's crazy how many things can come up that if you don't have a plan ahead of time, I can see how things could spiral quickly.
Yeah.
You really didn't know each other to the full extent.
Yeah.
I know that when we were actually in counseling, there was this list of questions that we used to go through, like 100 plus questions. We used to do like 2 or 3 a night but it was legit, like getting into understanding yourself. Like, what are your views on raising children? How many do you want? Where would you like to live? Is adoption an option? Or how involved do you want your parents to be in your relationship? And just questions that nobody really thinks about, because we're just here for the wedding. I don't have time to think about all that. It's going to be everything. Like, it's going to be all that I want it to be, but it won't, because quickly it will show that you really didn't know each other. And I do believe that even afterwards, you still can get to know each other. Yeah. But it's a lot harder going in and then backtracking to get to know each other, especially if other things come in, like children and other things else like that. So you have to have that solid foundation, I think, because when things do get shaky, and they will, when changes come up or whatever happens, it could be spouse loses a job or you lose your parent. There's always something that you still remember. Like, at the end of the day, we said we're in this forever. This is my person. No matter what, we can be mad and upset, but they're not leaving. I can hold true to that. Yeah. Like, that's the only thing I can hold on to today. That's what I can remember, and I'm good in that. I can rest in that.
Wow. You said a lot there, but what I can get from that is you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to do self-evaluation to understand who you are in order for you to even understand someone else, right? And then building that foundation together. So that's key there. It reminds me of a Bible verse, actually, in Proverbs 15, verse 1. It says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And we talk about conflict resolution, like you guys said, taking time out to maybe wait till something blows over, taking time out to value yourself. What are some evil habits or things that you've said and the way you responded that when you look at who Christ is and what the word says, or I should ask, how important is the word what is the influence the word has on your relationship in terms of conflict resolution?
It's a very, very interesting question. Because, and this is going to sound weird once again, some of the most conflicting conversations that we've had has been after we've done a devotion, a marital devotion. And they ask you a couple of questions at the very end, and those questions kind of just like blow up everything. So we started discussing it. And it honestly got to the point where we had to realize that, hey, maybe we shouldn't always just read marital devotions. And if we do, let's take a mental note of what these questions are saying to us, and then after deal with them at the end and at the time that we have allotted to actually talk about things that are in our marriage, because then it would just sour the devotion that was supposed to uplift us, right? So yeah, the word definitely has a space in our lives. It's very big. And we do that through just having devotion together. I have to be completely honest. We don't always do that together, but we do find times to have devotion together. And it has become increasingly hard because we don't have that one day like we used to, right? With Ezekiel, it's kind of like we're ripping and running. Like, she's up earlier than me because he wants to feed and do all this other stuff. I wake up, then I'm doing my devotion. She's already had her devotion, and then the day kind of just progresses, whatnot. And she's tired. She's gone to sleep early. I still have work to do. So it does get a little difficult as life becomes more nuanced. And right now, we literally just talked about this before we got on. And it's like we need to find that time where we can be intentional once again. Like, we're doing okay. We're keeping our head above water when it comes to keeping each other accountable or spiritualize, all of that. But we don't just want to do okay, right? We want to thrive.
Wow. Wow. This has been amazing. I think I've learned a lot. I've definitely learned a lot. And I'm sure someone who's listening right now is probably inspired. Like I said, a lot of us, we are banking on Instagram to tell us how to run relationships and social media, but to find people who actually are doing it the old school way, I would say it is. You know? That's the old school way, trying to make things work, communicating, being upfront and honest, using the word, even how your story of how you met. I think this was really, really powerful. But just to touch on what I learned here is, number one, you need to have a foundation, and you might have to do counseling. Like they said, try things, try to get to know each other. Don't just, it's not a bed of roses. You're not in La La Land. It's not about having a wedding. It's about having a successful marriage.
Yeah.
That's exactly a bond. That's a tie together, communication, setting out time, consistent time where you could talk about your feelings, emotions, how you felt about an issue, letting it blow over so that you're not making, saying any impatient and hasty words, hurting one another. What else did you mention? Self-reflection. Looking in, saying, what are my destructive habits? How is it contributing to this person's, bad emotions or such things, or triggering such different behaviors? We talked about devotions together, how powerful that is, and how it's funny because I was reading today that, the word discerns our thoughts. It's a motive tester and a character detector. And I think you're probably finding that you fight over such things because someone is being convicted of something, but you're like, no, Jesus, no, not me, it's him or it's her, I mean, that's what the word does. And it helps us, right? Like you said, maybe we'll just blow it over for now and we'll discuss it when we have a set out time where we're not emotional. But at the end of the day, it's love that binds us. And when we know God, we know what's love. We're willing to sacrifice. We're willing to concede rather than compromise.
That's right. That's the word. That's the word.
That is where concede. So if you're out there and you're listening, you concede, you don't compromise.
Yes, that's it.
So I just want to thank you, the Maddens. Thank you, Maddens, for being here with us today, speaking on conflict resolution. We pray for growth. We pray for a successful marriage. Continue to do what you do. We see you out here online. You're inspiring all of us. So I want you to do that and say hi to Ezekiel.
Yes.
All
right. So thank you so much. Any final words that you want to say?
Thank you for having us. We appreciate you even inviting us to be on this space, and we appreciate what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
We see you with the word of the day as well. It's a girl now. But we appreciate you. We appreciate your spirit, and we hope that as you guys move forward to your time as well, when you guys will be joined together, that God will truly open up the windows and pour you out a blessing that you don't have room to receive it.
Amen. I receive your blessing in the name of Jesus.
And I just wanted to say, we're really who we say we are. And so if you guys have any comments or questions, our DMs are always open.
Yes.
You can always hit us up. We love pouring into other people. We love connecting with other people. So don't be afraid. If you have a question, reach out to us on Instagram. And we'll be happy to have you. And we'll be happy to share with you some more about our relationship if you have some more questions. But we're open books. We like to be that way. We want to be authentic in what we portray and who we say we are all the time. So hold us accountable to that by reaching out to us so that we can connect with you. We look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They are the Maddens. And so make sure we're going to have the Instagrams down below in our comment section. Make sure to keep the conversation going. Conflict resolution. What are some other tips in, understanding our spouses? What are questions that you may have for the Maddens? And so we thank you. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And to our listeners, we thank you, and our donors. We also want to thank you for continuing this ministry. And so you're watching I Testify, a Conversation Station.